Hi everyone, we will just give it a couple more minutes so everyone can join. Hi everyone, welcome to our really exciting MOOC this evening. Today we have Discovering React with Aviva Insurance. Backstage, you have me, Krupa. I'm a Code First Girls brand ambassador. I've done several Code First Girls courses throughout the years and they've really helped me with my career. So I'm really looking forward to giving back to the community as a brand ambassador. So if you have any questions about Code First Girls, feel free to put them in the chat and I'll try and get back to them during the session. We're really excited to have a fantastic team from Aviva answering questions towards the end. And we've got Sarah, our instructor, joining us on the stream. Just to let everyone know that this YouTube video will be up for a week or two after the session today, so you'll be able to rewatch the content by visiting the same YouTube link. So I'd just like to introduce Sarah onto the stream. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
We can start when you're ready. So feel free to share your screen.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Krupa. Let me just share my screen. Cool. All right, can you see the PowerPoint? Cool, awesome. Right, so yes, I will start with a little bit about me. My name is Sarah. Why am I here today? I am a full stack developer. I work in the finance industry and I'm a big fan of React. I've been using it quite a lot over the last two or so years. And I'd like to share with you why you should learn it too. I'm also a big Code First Girls fan. I have taught about 7 Code First Girls courses. I wrote this MOOC. I've presented this MOOC before. I'm very involved with Code First Girls. I think it's a brilliant thing to be involved with. And yeah, if this is your first time at a Code First Girls things, I'd really recommend learn a little bit more about what they get up to because there's so many great opportunities. I really enjoy being involved. Yes, so more importantly, I'd like to know a little bit about you before we start. So if you can just kind of put in the YouTube comments 2 answers. So I'd like to know, why are you here today? Why would you like to learn React? And also, what is your current level of experience with React? Have you heard of it before but never used it? Maybe you've tried it but it didn't work. Maybe you use it every day. I'd love to get an idea of what brings you here today. So if you could just leave a little comment in the YouTube comments. So I'll start with me. The reason I learned React was because I'm a full stack developer. So we make websites, and yeah, we need a way to display the information on the website. Usually using JavaScript alone isn't quite enough for what we need to do with our websites because they're quite complicated. So we use React for that. All right, so we've got one in the chat who has used React before but not fully confident with it yet. And yeah, I definitely know how you feel. I was like that when I started using React for the first time as well. There's quite a lot to it. So hopefully we'll go over the basics today and hopefully you'll feel a little bit more confident tackling it once we've kind of explained the key concepts. All right, so we've got someone in their final year project using Java, Spring Boot, and React. So that's a lot of different frameworks. But yeah, a really common stack that's used throughout industry as well. Yeah, so we've got someone who's studying software development. We've got a career switcher. We've got a beginner, someone from a boot camp. All right, so we've got quite a variety of people here today. And it's great to see that so many different people from different backgrounds and different levels of experience are wanting to learn React, because I think it can really benefit everyone. Awesome. Okay, so thank you for engaging, and please do use the YouTube comments. There will be some people from Aviva that I believe will be answering any questions you have about how React is used in Aviva. And if you have any questions for me as well, feel free to put them in the chat and we can have a wee look at them at the end if there's time. All right, so what are we going to do today? We're going to start by talking about the motivations. I know you're all here because you want to be here, but I'd like to kind of go over why React is a useful thing to learn. Then we're going to go into a demo, so you'll actually be able to see some React code. And what I'm going to do is compare it to some HTML code as well. So for those of you who are familiar with web development, you maybe done the Code First Girls Introduction to Web Development course. Hopefully we can kind of contextualize what React looks like and what it aims to achieve compared to what we already know. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about kind of careers in web development, how can we use React, and what are the next steps if you want to go ahead and start using the React JavaScript framework. And then for the final half an hour, we'll have some people from Aviva who are able to answer any questions that you guys have. All right, so without further ado, I think we will get started. And I'm going to start with a little brief history of JavaScript. This feels like a little bit of a tangent, but I think it'll explain why React is useful. So JavaScript was created over a period of 10 days in 1995. Obviously, the internet looks a lot different now, so something to bear in mind. The reason it was created was to give a little bit of extra functionality to user interfaces on the website, and also to add some interactivity to our sites. So for those of you familiar with HTML, that gives the structure of the site, but JavaScript was created to allow some user interaction. JavaScript actually has nothing to do with Java, something that I think is worth clarifying. The reason it's called JavaScript was to ride on the popularity of Java at the time, which I think is quite funny. And yes, another thing to know about JavaScript is that it's the most used programming language in the world. So a lot of places use plain JavaScript, which is you might have seen before, but a lot of people use JavaScript frameworks as well. So things like React, Angular, Node. There's a lot of things that extend the functionality of JavaScript that we can look into. So why would you want to use a JavaScript framework? As I mentioned before, JavaScript was created like 25 years ago, and the web looked very different back then. In our modern web apps, frameworks allow us to have extra functionality and extra features as well. So what are the kind of benefits of using a framework? The first one is reusability. So something you might have noticed if you've used HTML before is you end up repeating yourself quite a lot. So say, for example, you have a navigation bar at the top of your site. You want to have that on every page, but then you don't want to have to copy and paste and have all this HTML, repeated HTML across all your files. So frameworks can give a solution for that. They also help with maintainability and readability. You'll notice in the demo that the code that we have for React is a lot smaller, a lot more compact, and a lot more componentized. So we've got a bit of a separation of concerns. So instead of having massive long HTML files, we have quite small React files, but more of them. And it makes it a little bit more readable as well, having these smaller components. Another thing that we can get from our frameworks is statefulness. So we'll touch a little bit more about this in a second, but it's a really useful feature for interactive apps. And the other thing is that it makes it easier to integrate with other JavaScript libraries. If you do a little bit of Googling for like React, things compatible with React, there's a lot of different things we can do to kind of extend React. In terms of like JavaScript frameworks, React is not the only one. Other ones are available. React is one that's created by Facebook. We also have Angular, which is created by Google. Offers similar benefits. And there's also Vue.js as well, which is kind of becoming a little bit more popular these days. This is the new one, potentially the future. But yes, we're going to talk about React today. Why did we choose React to teach you? First of all, it's very popular in industry, used by Netflix, Instagram, New York Times, and it's actually developed and maintained by Facebook. Well, Facebook is now Meta. The benefit of that being that it's maintained, like there's people whose job it is at Facebook to keep React going, keep it up to date, keep it modern and free from security vulnerabilities. So having that like big company behind it makes it more secure and more stable. There's also a strong community of users. What this means for us is that there's loads of tools available, loads of Stack Overflow articles if you're stuck on things, and lots of documentation and blog posts available for React. So if you do get stuck, hopefully you'll be able to find the answer. Yes, so the UI in React is split into reusable components, which you can use across your website, and it's brilliant for single-page web apps. So you might be familiar with this. This is when like everything's on one page, and the kind of components inside that frame of the page change. Yes, and the key kind of selling point of React is this state. So our UI automatically updates depending on the state of the components, and compare that to normal JavaScript where we have to locate the component in the DOM tree and then update it manually. So it's a good one to learn. So you've chosen well. All right, so next up, we're going to talk a little bit about the basics of React, and then I'm going to go into my demo. So just a recap of HTML and JavaScript. Hopefully you've seen this before, but no worries if not. So a really quick overview, HTML or hypertext markup language, we use this to describe the structure of a website. So what things are going to be on the page? Are we going to have divs? Are we going to have sections? Are we going to have headers, subheaders, paragraphs, lists, tables, images? So HTML is how we describe the structure of our website. And then we also have JavaScript. So JavaScript is a web scripting language, and we use that for all the logic and functionality of a website. So yes, I've got a little example here of HTML syntax. So we've got these kind of like angled brackets that you use as your tags. And then in JavaScript, hopefully this looks a little bit familiar. It is just a programming language. So that's those two. And now we'll look at React syntax. And the language that we use for React is called JSX. And what this does is it kind of combines your markup, so your structure of the page, and the logic into one. So it's kind of like a mixture of HTML and JavaScript, which probably looks a little bit weird if you've never seen it before. But I'll just show you this example here. So export default function. So this looks a little bit like JavaScript. This looks a little bit like JavaScript. And then the thing that we return from this function is the kind of HTML, so like the structure of what this component is going to have in it. So it's kind of like a mixture of JavaScript and HTML. And the benefit of that is it allows us to integrate the functionality and the structure of one component together, so they're grouped together. Compare that to what you might have seen before with plain JavaScript and HTML, where you've got your HTML file and then you've got a JavaScript file that you reference. In this case, we keep the logic and the structure grouped closely together within the component. Okay, so I've mentioned the word component quite a lot. So let's go a little bit deeper into that. So React components are the kind of building blocks of our React app. So a component is a reusable block of code that can be used throughout a React application. A component is a function. So yeah, most things are functions in JavaScript. And it takes in a property known as the props, and it returns some like HTML. So the props, just a reminder of our function syntax here. Functions take in a parameter, and the parameter is this props. So our props are read-only things. So we pass them from the parent into the child. And our components represent the different elements that we have on the website. So an example of something that could be a component is the navbar of your website, or like the header section of your website, or maybe like the go to basket button. And the other thing about components is that they can be nested. So say, for example, the navbar component. The navbar component might have a homepage button. That might be its own component. And that's inside the navbar component, which is inside the app component. So hopefully you can see you can break down things into smaller components. And for me, I think it makes it a lot easier to kind of see how things work when you've got components that are named nicely, and have a kind of single point of concern. So there's a little link in the slides for you to read more about components and props. And I've got a little example on CodePen as well for you to look at. So yeah, you can have a little look at that in your own time. So the next thing that we have with React is state. So the state, clues in the name, it represents the current state of the application. So state is like the current value of some variable in an app. Variable meaning that it's probably going to change at some point, and we maybe want to render something different when that variable changes. So React allows us to render things in the state to let the user know what the state of the app is. So an example of something that might be stored in the state is like, imagine you had a countdown clock that updates every second. The time, like the time left on the timer, would be represented in the state, and that state's updating. And every time the state updates, it'll render something new. So another thing could be your online shopping basket. So you imagine your little basket component, like you can see at the bottom here, and like, you know, that number might update every time you click on another item to add to your basket. So that could be represented by the state, the number of things in the basket. Another thing that you could represent in the state is like a list of things. So imagine on Facebook, you know, you have that thing, like a list of all your friends that are online. That could be represented in the state, and that obviously updates quite often depending on like who's online as they're logging on and logging off. So I have a little example here. Oh, I'm not sharing the right screen. Let me just share the correct screen with you. All right. So you can see this one in the slides as well. So what we've got is a little countdown timer. And what I want you to pay attention to is this JavaScript code on the left here. So this is an example of a React component. And yeah, so what happens here, remember our render function is what we're going to render on the page. And that's going to return some like HTML looking stuff. So we've got a div here and a paragraph. And you can see in here, we've got these like angled braces with some reference to the state. So that's what's going to be rendering on the right here after the word seconds remaining is the value of this.state.timer. So if I'm just to refresh my page, and you can see the clock in action, and you can see it's updating. And that's because the state is updating. So how is the state updating here? We have this function that runs on component did mount. Don't worry too much about the syntax. We'll look a little bit more syntax later. But basically, we have an interval every 1,000 milliseconds. We're going to call this function tick. And what tick does is it updates the state to be like lower. So for example, our timer started at 10, and then every second it goes down and down and down and down. And that's what's happening in this tick function. So we're setting the state, the previous state -1 to represent going down the clock. And then once we get to 0, we're going to set the state to be time's up. So state is just a variable, basically. And the value of that variable we can display in our HTML that gets returned. Yeah, so let's go back to the slides. You're welcome to play about with that code pen. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at a demo. So the purpose of this demo is to kind of show you what React looks like and how does that compare to what you might have seen before. You should have got some materials sent out to you before class. I think we'll send them out afterwards as well. But the code for this is on GitHub if you'd like to kind of download it and have a little play about with yourself. So yeah, let's go into the demo. I'm just going to share my full screen. Oh, and okay. So let me just get everything ready. Yes, so the code is available on GitHub if you'd like to have a little look yourself. It's a simple website and a good kind of starting point of a project that you can kind of use yourself and maybe make edits to and add some more functionality in your own time. Yes, so what I've got, just to kind of show you what's set up here, I've got this app running on localhost 3000. The way that I run that is using npm. So you might have got some instructions about downloading npm. That's so that we can run the application. We use npm to run our React apps. So I've got this running on port 3000. So if I go back to my browser, oh dear me, too many windows. Apologies. I actually can't see my browser anymore. Here we go. Yes, so I've got this app running on localhost 3000. So let's have a look at what we've got here. We have my ice cream React site. We've got a navigation bar at the top with 3 little sections. And when you click on them, it takes you to the different sections of the single page web application. So we've got a thing here. We've got a little gallery with 3 images in it, ice cream. I'm quite a big ice cream fan, in case you can't tell. We've also got this section called ice cream flavors. And what you can do here is we've got a little box. And when you click on different things on the box, that will appear here as your flavor of choice. So I can click on different things in the box and hopefully you'll be able to see that this is updating automatically on the page. And then the third component that we have on this page is a little list of ice cream shops. And I can add my new ice cream shop to the list and it will update on the page. Something I will say is this isn't connected to a database or anything, so none of this data will be persisted. So if I refresh the page, my ice cream shop has been removed. So yeah, this isn't connected to anything to persist the data, but you can play about with it in memory. All right, so let's take a look at what this might look like in HTML first. So hopefully you can see my screen okay. Give me a shout if you can't. But yeah, so here's what this would look like in HTML, right? So we've got our head section where we'd have linked out to our JavaScript file that has all the functionality in it, and maybe out to a style sheet as well. And then inside the body, we would have our navbar, like a div that I've called navbar, which contains some links. Then we've got like a header section. We've got a div for the gallery. We've got another div for all the flavors, which has some functions that it references, and those functions would be in a separate JavaScript file. And then same for the ice cream shops component, where referencing out to a JavaScript file that would have all the functionality. Now, this is fine. This would work. Perfectly valid way of doing things. But there's a couple of things that I think we could improve. And I think we can improve them with React. The first one is that this file is quite long. And I don't know about you, but I find it quite hard to read because there's like a lot here. And some of it's like quite big pieces of code. Yeah, the other thing is like it might be quite difficult to maintain as the site gets bigger. Imagine we start adding new pages. We want to have that navbar there, so we're going to have to copy this component, move it over. And then like, what if I want to add something new to the navbar? Then I'm going to have to update it on this page and the next page and the next page. Who's been there before? I have definitely been there before. Oh, isn't that the worst when you're like on one page of the website and the navbar looks different from the rest? Not ideal. So yes, this might be hard to maintain as the site gets bigger. Yes, and the other thing is for our interactive elements, we're referencing get value here, but get value is, going to be in some JavaScript file that's separate from here. So it's not clear from just like looking at this kind of part of the code, what exactly is going to happen with get value. We're going to have to kind of dig through our JavaScript to find it. So yeah, not ideal. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you this side by side with what it would look like in React. So let me just do a little split down the side here. All right, so on the left here, we've got the React version, and on the right, we've got our HTML. So hopefully you can see it does look a little bit different. And I know this is new syntax for you, so don't worry, but let's, hopefully this makes my point clear. So yeah, the React file is a lot smaller, is the first thing you can see. This one's about 20 lines. This one's about 60 lines. And I personally think it's quite a lot easier to read. Looking through it from top to bottom, we've got a div called app. Then we've got a navbar, a header, a gallery, a flavor section, a shops, and then another navbar at the bottom. I find this a lot easier to read. There's a lot more like clear space, there's not big long lines of code. Yeah, so I think this looks quite nice. And yes, the difference here, the big difference is these custom components. So this navbar component, gallery component, and they look like HTML, but they're actually React components that I've defined in other component files in my project. So yes, here's an example of a React component, and we will dive into them in just a second. Just a little bit of context, where did this code come from? Something to note about React is there's sometimes quite a lot of boilerplate code that's required. You might have heard this phrase before. Boilerplate references like before you can even get started, you kind of need like a few files to be set up. And if you can see like here, there's like quite a lot of like files. We need an app.js, which is kind of the main one. And then there's also some your like CSS, there's a HTML, there's something called a package.json, which is what manages all our NPM libraries that we use. And there's a kind of specific folder structure that we would expect to see for a React app as well. Now, I can never remember how to do that, but luckily we don't need to know how to do that because there's a special thing to help us with that, and it's called Create React App. Again, this one's referenced in your materials, and it's referenced in the GitHub as well. So when you get started with your new React app, you can kind of like get the main structure and file structure, folder structure set up automatically. So you can just start writing the code, which I think is really nice. All right, so one or two more things before we dive into the components. So app here is a function. This is what's going to return our like single page web app. And it takes in no inputs. And the thing that the function returns is like all of these components. And you'll notice that there's kind of a mixture. So we've got some things that are just plain HTML that you might remember. So like here, lines 11 to 13, where we've got like a header component. But then we've also got these like JSX React components here as well. So you can use both HTML and React components inside your render function. So what's going to be returned. Yeah, another thing to note is that everything that you return, so everything needs to be wrapped in something. A function generally can't return more than one thing. So we want to wrap everything that we're going to return inside a div so that we're not trying to return multiple things, because that's something that's not allowed. All right, so now that we've seen the app itself, let's have a look at these individual components that I've been going on about so much. So a little trick, if you use Visual Studio Code, you can do Control-click and actually access the file where it is. And just to see where that is in the folder structure, I've got this folder called Components, and inside that folder, I've got all the components that I'd like to render on my page. All right, so let's have a look at this Navbar component. And yeah, again, something to note here, it's a lot smaller than our like big HTML page, because it's only the code that we need for that little bit that is the navbar. So just this blue navbar at the top with these 3 links on it, that's what's represented in here. So yeah, and this one doesn't have any state. This component just has the items in the navbar. So yeah, we can have a component like this that has no state and it just renders something. And I think that's still nice because you've got that separation of concerns and you can use this navbar in more than one place. And you can see that on the page, actually. I've got this navbar at the bottom as well as at the top. All right, what else have we got? The next section we've got is this gallery section. So again, I'm just going to Control-click and have a look at this gallery component. And yeah, very similar to the navbar. It's mostly just HTML that's in here. And the gallery just has the structure of the HTML. What else is worth noting here? So yes, everything in React, all our React components are functions. And you can see here it's being exported, export default function. What this means is that we're making it available basically for other components in our app to use. So at the top here, I import the gallery into app so that I can use it. So I'm importing that component, and then before I can import it, I need to export it from this file. So that's what's going on here. And yes, when you are importing things, you use the import syntax, which is just this: import the name of the component from, and then that's going to be the relative path to the file. All right, so yeah, so that's our gallery component. The next one we'll look at is the flavors component. Let's have a look. All right, so this one's a little bit more exciting. And you can see that, again, this is a function. It's called flavors. There's nothing that goes into the parameters here, which means there's no props that we're using for this component. Remember, our props are the properties that we pass in. And let's have a look at what's happening here. So let's look at the HTML first so we can kind of contextualize it. So the flavors section, we've got this header, we've got this little box that changes, and then we've got this bold piece of text that updates to whatever the user has selected. So what does that look like in React? We've got H2, so that's our header. We've got a label, and then we've got this select. So remember, your select component is that drop-down button. And the value of that, so this is something new, right? So instead of being like a hard-coded string value within double quotes, the value is within curly braces. So those curly braces are the syntax we use in JSX to denote that we're going to put some code in there. In this case, we're referencing our variable selected flavor. And then on change, Again, we're not going to reference something using a string. We're actually going to reference something in our code, so it goes within curly braces. And we've got this function handle change that we're going to call. Okay, so the value is selected flavor. So let's have a look at that. So selected flavor is a state variable. So let's have a look at this syntax. Const, so it's always a const, and then you're going to do a little array of size 2. And the first thing that's going to be in there is the name of your variable. So in this case, selected flavor. And then the second thing that goes into the array is what you're going to name the setter function. So this is going to be set selected flavor. And that is equal to use state. And then what goes in here is the default value. So you'll notice when I first load the page, the flavor of choice is coconut. So that's where that's coming from here. So we've set this up, selected flavor, to be coconut when the page first loads. The next thing that we have is this onChange function. And handle change is what I've called it. And you can see this here on line 6. So handle change takes in an event. We don't have to explicitly pass in the event. It's just there for us to use. An event target value is whatever the user has selected in the dropdown. So lime, it could be grapefruit, etc. Yeah, so that's what's going on here. And then as you can see on line 22, the user's flavor of choice is selected flavor. Remember, selected flavor is our React component. It's our React state variable, and that changes. So how this works under the hood, basically the component will re-render, so the HTML will be regenerated depending on with the state. So anytime the state changes, the component will re-render to display the new state. Okay, and then the final component we have here is the shops component. Let's have a look at that one. So again, it's being exported. It is a function. It's just called shops, and it doesn't take in any props. If it did, they would be here, and I could say I had I don't know, what would I call my prop? Item, and then I could reference that in here. But currently it doesn't take in any props. And we've got 2 state variables here. So we've got list, which is an array of all the ice cream shops that are going to be in the list to start with. And then we have item, which is going to be what is the user typing into the box. So just a reminder of what this does. When I type something into here and press add or press enter, it adds it into the list. So the list is getting bigger every time I add something. So how does this work? There's 2 things that we need to do, right? The first one is to list out all the things that are in the list. And that's what we're doing on line 24 here. So instead of having to write a line of HTML for everything you want in the list, we can use some of the JavaScript map functions that iterate. So it goes through each item in the array and renders a list item for it. So that's what we're doing here. We're displaying what's in the list. And obviously, anytime the list changes, so if things are added or removed from the list, this will re-render, this part will re-render. The other thing we have is that little form where the user can type something in. So we've got an input where the value is item, and on change, we're going to have this handle change function. So what this does is anytime the user types a character into the box, it's going to set item to the full string that they've typed into the box. So that's what's happening here. And then the final thing we've got here is our submit button. And that's what's here. And on submit, we're going to call our handle submit function. So what happens here is we make a copy of the list. We add the item, so whatever the user has typed into the box, onto that list. And then we set list. So the list that's in the state, we're going to set that to be our new list that has all the components and all the items in it. And then this final line, event prevent default, this is just to stop the form like trying to make an API call. So that just needs to be there to stop the whole page kind of refreshing and going a little bit weird when we add something. So yeah, that's what's happening in here. All right, so I know this has probably been like quite a lot to see and a lot of new functionality, new syntax, but hopefully you can see the points that I've tried to be conveying. So our syntax is kind of like a combination of HTML and JavaScript. We group the functionality close to the structure inside our components, and we can use components to kind of break up and add some more readability and maintainability to our component, to our app. So our components are really useful for reusability and readability, and that's part of why React is so popular. All right, so we have a couple minutes left. Does anyone have any questions about the demo before we jump into the next section? Okay, I can't see any questions in the chat so far. No worries. Okay, let's start the screen share again, and we can go back to the slides. Okie doke. Hopefully you can see my screen. All right, so we talked a little bit at the start about React's popularity. Yes, so why would you want to learn a JavaScript framework? The web applications that you can write with React, they're used everywhere. I think that's something that I find really nice about working in tech and having tech skills, is that you can apply them to every industry. So you might work for a tech company, finance company, education, e-commerce. I mean, who doesn't have a website these days? So yeah, we can apply it to so many different industries. Our JavaScript frameworks allow us to more easily manage our code, which is something that's really important in industry. So I work in quite a large organization where, there's lots of people, lots of teams. Your work is being reviewed by other people, and it might be like the code that you've worked on might be used by other people in the future or changed by other people in the future. So it's really important that your code's easy to read and manage so that it's maintainable. So something to think about is like websites that you might interact with on a daily basis that have some interactivity built in. A lot of them use web frameworks such as React to handle that interactivity. So something to have a think about, like next time you interact with like a website, maybe do a little bit of Googling, see what you can find, like maybe it's written in React. And yeah, web development also, it's a lucrative skill. We're living in a time where there's more jobs than people, if you're interested in development. So yeah, React devs, you can get quite a nice salary, and yeah, lots of interesting problems to solve, lots of different companies that you can work for, and yeah, definitely a good one to add to your CV, something that's being used. And don't take my word for it. I did a little look on Indeed at the start of this year. There's over 3,000 job listings on there that mention React as a required skill. So that was back in January, but yeah, there's plenty of job opportunities available at the moment as well. So when it comes to getting a new role, there's a few different ways you can do it. And I know you guys that have tuned in tonight have kind of come from a bunch of different backgrounds. So you can look at things like the Code First Girls Nano degree. You can look at getting an entry-level role or a graduate scheme role. You could look at doing agency work. There's lots of different ways that you can get into technology. And I think this leads quite nicely into the chat with Aviva after this, where you can kind of find a little bit more about what the opportunities are there as well. But yeah, with your React skills, you could become a developer, a software engineer. You could be a business analyst, a usability expert. You could go into, user interface or user experience design, loads of things that are worth doing. Okay, so that kind of brings us to the end of what I wanted to share with you today. So just to kind of summarize what we've looked at, JavaScript frameworks allow us to do more with JavaScript, make it more organized, keep our code maintainable and readable. React is a popular web framework, not the only one, but it is a very popular one used in lots of large organizations for the benefits that it provides. Those being splitting up our website into components, maintaining state. And yeah, this is kind of just the start. Once you've got a React app set up, so you've used your Create React app, you can add in all sorts of integrations and libraries. NPM is something we can use for that. So yeah, my best advice is choose a framework. It doesn't have to be React, but find a framework and just try something, try and build something that you're interested in. Maybe it's a personal blog website. Maybe it's like, maybe you're in like a club or a society that you want to create a website for. Find something you're interested in and just try and build it, see what you can do, and definitely make most of the internet. Like, you know, the interesting thing about working in tech is like things change so quickly, and a lot of people are trying to solve similar problems. So make use of the internet, see if someone else has like come up with a library to fix something that you're trying to do. Yeah, lots of options. So yeah, what can you do next? Starting a project is always a good way and a fun way as well. So you can either kind of come up with a new idea, or maybe you've already like started something using HTML and JavaScript, you know, maybe a Code for Skills project if you did the web development course, and see if you can kind of translate that into a React app, or even just like have a think about, okay, what could I turn into a component here? Like what are the things that are being reused? How could I implement them using React? Yeah, or there's a little link that you can use here as well to the code that we had today. So you can kind of use that as a starting point, maybe add your own functionality into that as well. Yeah, a note on web development, like it is fast evolving. So you do need to kind of stay up to date. Things change, the syntax changes over time. They keep adding new features, either for security, stability, or just to kind of give you more functionality. So yeah, don't be afraid to Google things, follow tutorials online. There's loads of resources available for you to learn more. And something else to note, React is different from React Native. So if you are doing some kind of searching for information and things come up for React Native, that's not the same. React Native is for like mobile development. So just make sure that the resources that you're using mention React.js or just React, not React Native. All right, and yes, there's some instructions on the slides here about kind of how you can get started with turning your own HTML and JavaScript site into a React app. So if you're wanting to get started, this is a good part for you to start. I'd love to hear how you get on as well. My LinkedIn details are there if you want to send me a message and let me know how you get on. Or, you know, like post about it as well. Like Code First Girls have got Instagram, LinkedIn. You can tag them in your projects. Let us know how you get on. All right. And thank you so much for coming along today. I hope that you're excited and curious about learning a little bit more about React. And yeah, I think we've got some time left for questions if there are any. So yeah, fire any questions into the YouTube chat and we can have a little conversation.
Hey Sarah, that was amazing. That was such a great session. As someone who's only done sort of HTML and JavaScript, I actually did a Code First Girls course a couple of years ago. So trying to bring that all together in a React app sounds really interesting. Sounds like a really cool project to do. Just a little bit of background on you as well. You also did a couple of Code First Girl courses before you got started into this. So if you just want to give us a little bit of background about what you did with Code First Girls as well, that would be great.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, as I said, I'm a big fan of Code First Girls. I started teaching maybe 2 years ago. They were teaching an in-person course in my office and someone kind of brought me along to get involved, and I just fell in love ever since. So I've taught the web development course a few times. I've taught the Python one. I'm currently teaching the SQL and data science course. And you know what? They're all so different and all so interesting. And I think it's really nice to kind of do more than one and see how they all kind of, because they all cover different parts, to kind of understand like the different parts that might make up the websites and programs that we interact with day to day. In terms of my educational background, I did a computer science degree. But I think something to note is you definitely don't need a computer science degree to get started in tech. And I think that's something so exciting about Code First Girls, is there's so many opportunities. Like if you want to switch careers, or you want to just like find out a little bit more about tech and whether it is for you. I mean, yeah, hopefully if you enjoy solving problems, I think you'll get a lot out of coming to any kind of the Code First Girls things.
Definitely. We've actually got a couple of questions since we've got a little bit of time, so I'll add them up onto the screen. So we've got one question from the YouTube chat, which is it possible to find a job purely being a React developer, or would you expect to know several other languages?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Yasmin. So yeah, it's true. Like there are some jobs where they'd be looking for a full stack developer. But that would be the job description. It would maybe like full stack software engineer, and they might mention React in it. But there's also teams that are just looking for front end developers. And you know, a lot of teams will mention the framework that they use, be it Angular, React, Vue.js. So yeah, you absolutely can get a job as just a React developer. But I think in most software engineering jobs now, you get a little bit of exposure to other technologies as well. So even if you are only doing front-end development, you still might have to chat to teams that are working on back-end or database things as well. So yeah, there's not an expectation that you need to know like Java and JavaScript and React and SQL just to get your kind of, especially your first job in tech. But there's a lot of opportunities to get exposed to different technologies as well.
Amazing. So we've got another question where, are there any projects you would recommend beginners to start working with React as a way of learning?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, Laura. So I think the best project is the project you're excited about. Like, you know, if you're interested in something, you've got like ideas about how you would tackle it. It's a lot easier to motivate yourself and kind of be curious. I think as a software engineer, you know, you're in somewhere that's changing so quickly, you're always learning. So being curious and motivated to try new things is really important for developing your skills. So try and find a project that you're excited about and you'll want to spend time on. You know, maybe that's making a personal blog so you can share some stories or some pieces of writing that you've come up with. Or, you know, as I said, like, so I'm in a running club. Like I've kind of toyed with the idea of creating a little website for the running club. You know, you maybe don't have to publish it or anything, but, you know, just to kind of give you some context and to think about something to make a project about. But yeah, maybe my advice would be start simple. Don't be too ambitious. Like try one thing at a time, and then keep adding functionality as you go. Yeah, and that's the nice thing about React. You can just build a component for each thing that you want to put on the site.
Amazing. Then we've just got a couple of technical questions. So is Flask the same, but just for Python as opposed to JavaScript?
You know, I'm probably not the best person to ask this one. I'm not a Python developer. I believe that Python Flask is more for like serving up APIs than for front end stuff. I wouldn't hold me to that. I think Flask is more a library you can use within Python for doing some like website stuff, but I don't think that they're the same. React is like a framework for managing, like that's kind of sits on top of JavaScript, whereas Flask is something that you can kind of, it's like a utility that you can use in Python. But they both solve very different problems. So I don't think I could really draw any parallels between them from what I know. Sorry.
Brilliant. So I guess just before we finish off, is there sort of one last piece of advice that you'd give to everyone online about your experience or sort of getting into tech for the first time?
I have so many pieces of advice. I think don't worry, I think is the best thing. So yeah, as I said, I did a computer science degree. I studied it for 4 years, and I went into my first tech job and I knew nothing. And that's fine. No one's expecting you to know everything. Technology is changing so quickly, and every company has like different stacks. They use slightly different tech and different languages for different things. So as long as you're curious, you're passionate, you demonstrate that you want to be there and you want to learn and try new things, like that's the most important thing. Don't worry if you don't know everything, because you can't know everything. And that is what Google is for, and Stack Overflow. There's so many resources online for learning. So if you don't know everything, that's absolutely fine. We have all been there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining. Now we'll sort of switch over to the Aviva side of things. Aviva's actually been sponsoring the session, and they've actually got a couple of nano-degree places, which I'll sort of discuss towards the end. So let me introduce the whole Aviva team. So we have Neil, who is part of resource management. We have Claire, who's in early careers resourcing, and then we also have David, who is a software engineer. So first one up is David, if you want to take that away.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Hi everyone, my name is David Scott. I'm a graduate apprentice software developer at Aviva. So it's actually really interesting hearing some of the kind of advice kind of the last speaker and was talking about, because coming in as an apprentice, it's a similar situation. You're not expected to know everything, and the thing is, you can't know everything. It's very true when you're going into such a large organization, when the tech is changing so rapidly, and also the fact that you don't have to have that software engineering degree or computing science degree. You come in it as the angle to be that kind of ambitious person who is willing to learn. That's what it's all about. So I joined Aviva in 2018, and actually I didn't come in as a React developer. So I worked on one of our kind of big commercial insurance application, which is Guidewire. So that's it's a Java syntax. It's using primarily. So that was a really good kind of tech stack to start on, because Aviva provided the training on that specific application. And also throughout that kind of 3 years when I was in that team, I learned a lot about Java as a whole, especially with doing the apprenticeship and going to university on a kind of part-time basis. I was learning, the first language I learned was Python, because I think that's quite a good one to start, because it's not object orientated. And then from that, I learned like C++ and Java, but Java is probably my kind of strongest language that I've worked with over the past 3 years. So I decided I kind of wanted to try a new language and kind of expand that knowledge within the tech stack. So that's why I kind of decided at that point I seeked new experiences. I reached out to people within Aviva, and I had my eyes set on kind of learning React for a lot of the reasons that have already been mentioned. The fact that it's a modern tech stack which is being used by multiple organizations, and it is very applicable across multiple industries. Big companies like Netflix, Facebook, Instagram, Airbnb, they're all using React, and Aviva included within that. And in Aviva's specifically on what kind of applications we actually use. So we've got Aviva Plus Home, we've got Santander Home. So you're actually working with some of our kind of strategic partners, which don't necessarily, you wouldn't necessarily think that we actually build some of their apps, but we do for Santander and a few other banks as well. Workplace pensions, that's another app which has been built on React. And actually the Santander one, interestingly, that was started with a Create React app. So that actually was started from the kind of basics. So it wasn't like provided It was kind of built from that point up within our team. I wasn't there when that was first done because I'm only new to the team from September. But I think what's important is to recognise that if you do have that interest, you're more than capable, because it's about where that interest lies and about pursuing it to get to the point um, where you actually where you want to get to, essentially. Um, so I work within the quote and payment platform. So our kind of main purpose is the creation, maintenance, and also the kind of innovation of all of our quote journeys. So when a customer comes in to do a quote, whether that's a staff member trying to get a quote on their workplace pension, um, which could work for an organisation that our pension kind of schemes are through with Aviva, and also thinking about um, someone coming into a quote on Santander, they're wanting to take out home insurance. They would do that through the Santander website, but like I said, we maintain that specific quote journey for Aviva. Um, so that's so that's kind of the basis of what apps use React as such. And also all of our journeys are kind of underpinned by our quote engine API that uses .NET, which is where that kind of the kind of main purpose of the quote engine is to um, feed the questions to the front end, and also when the answer's returned, that's where all the pricing happens. And thinking about like the API, all of the front end does those kind of requests and responses, which feeds obviously the data as part of the quote journey. So Aviva, um, like I said, of using React for a lot of applications, and most recently I'm working on a GuideWire project, and what was interesting is so that's been built on React, so the front end. So the way to think about GuideWire for someone who you wouldn't be aware if you didn't work in the insurance industry um, is that sits behind it. So that's the API essentially, and then we're building a front end broker system which sits on top of that API. So that's using React, and that's slightly different to how our other React apps have been built, because it's using a kind of weird metadata syntax. So again, it just shows you that even though you are a React developer, you are kind of pushing the boundaries, because you're going into different tech stacks, you're working with different applications. But that's a really good thing about it, because it's so broad, and I think that kind of full stack development is really useful, especially with the kind of way the industry is going nowadays with the demands. Um, a couple of other things I kind of want to talk about is the learning experience for me. I've actually picked up React pretty well, but I think it's because it's a good language to learn, because I think it's enjoyable to start with. And there's a lot of kind of benefits which I'll touch on in a minute. But I think the best kind of places where I've learned it in terms of the training tools available, a really good one out there is Epic React. It's a bit expensive, but um, it is a really good way, because it's up to date, and actually React is always changing. There's always new updates, so you can't learn content which is like 2 years old, because it might not be applicable for the project or the kind of versions you're trying to use. But what I like about it is the fact that it is that kind of component based, and you're building your components which are separate from the main kind of body of the application, and you're building those components to make that more complex UI, which is a much more kind of responsive way to build an application, hence why it's kind of popularity. Um, and I think the best kind of place to start is that kind of create React app. So starting with a basic app and then building it up. Something I'm doing just now at university. So I'm currently doing like a mountain because I'm interested in like rock climbing. So that's kind of where my interest lies. So I'm trying to build an app which I create a React app which supplies like a map. There's various things in there like forecasting for like weather conditions. So actually that's a really good place to start because I started with a basic app. It was something very simple. Then I've started kind of increasing that knowledge, and I've actually learned a lot out of actually just going in and building an app. That's the best way to start. And yeah, it's important that you're kind of following the right tutorials because there is a lot of stuff out there which can be misleading in a sense. So you need to just make sure the content you're viewing and learning, you're actually learning the right stuff. And I think it is the reason it is kind of modern day and why it's so popular. And there is various reasons because it is component based. It's much more maintainable. The components are kind of encapsulated, which they are already managing their own state, but also if you are kind of making any changes to a component, it's not going to affect other parts of the application, which again makes it more stable. Refactoring is done much easier, and yeah, a whole kind of range of different things that to why one of my kind of favorite things is the fact that it has kind of the virtual DOM. So when you are making a change, when you save, you're seeing that kind of change automatically in the browser. So it's really good in that sense, and it actually makes developing on React very productive because you're not having to start servers. You're literally saving and then it's refreshing using that virtual DOM. So I don't. I'm happy to take some questions as well. But yeah, that's my main piece of advice. Would be like if you have that kind of ambition to learn, you don't have to have that kind of background of IT. I never had that coming out of school. I had no IT qualifications in programming. However, I had that kind of ambition to learn, and the fact I went into another apprenticeship before I joined Aviva, that definitely helped too. So, yeah, what I would say is just give it your best, and there's definitely plenty of opportunities out there in the market, and React seems to be growing in popularity, and I'm sure it's a language, it's a framework library that will stay there for a long time.
Thanks, David. That was really insightful. We've actually got a couple of questions, but I think we should get to them towards the end. So we'll go through all of the other presentations first.
Sure.
Brilliant. So now we have Claire. If you'd like to take it away.
Yeah, brilliant. Oh, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. It's been really great to see so much engagement on the comments and all of your questions, and I can see that David's got a fellow rock climbing enthusiast as well in the chat. So I think there were a couple of questions with regards to entry requirements at Aviva, and I'll come on to those, but just wanted to sort of give you some context to the types of roles that we regularly recruit for onto our graduate programs, and the entry requirements as well. So we've had a partnership with Code First Girls for almost a year now, and as Krupa mentioned at the beginning, we have had sponsored events like this MOOC today, and a number of classroom activities and boot camps, as well as sponsoring some people to go through the nano degree who fantastically have since come and joined us. So we do operate a graduate specific technology program at Aviva. We split our program into what we call 3 pathways, and they are groups of similar roles. So one of our pathways is a software development pathway, And we have roles such as software engineers and DevOps engineer roles as well. We recruit in various different locations around the country, but predominantly Bristol, Norwich, Perth and York. So software development, as you would guess, if you were to join us in a software development role, you'd be helping us to create the tools that shape the way that we work, the way our customers interact with us, and how we connect with our customers to make sure that we give them, access to their products as and when they need it. We also have a user experience pathway, so we recruit user experience designers within London and Norwich. And then we have a third pathway, which is change management. And the types of roles that we recruit for within that pathway are the likes of business analysts, project managers, cloud architects, and cyber governance roles. But all of the roles that we're recruiting for are on our website, and we will send a copy of an information pack around if anybody would like some more information. But Sarah and David use quite a few of our regular buzzwords, which is one of the common themes that we look for in any of our graduates and our applicants for our technology programs is people who are really curious. We don't expect our graduates to join us and to know everything. That's what we're here for as an employer, and it's why we've partnered with the likes of Code First Girls to help you get the experience and exposure to feel confident in if you were to do a career change into technology, or to take your first steps after university. But what we really do look for are people that are curious, people that are hungry to learn, people that challenge the status quo. We love people that join us and question why we do things, because often diversity of thought and new people joining the business really helps us to rethink how we do things. So to answer some of the questions on entry requirements, first up, we are looking for people who are passionate about technology and how that can benefit our colleagues and our customers. We want people who are motivated to sort of drive innovation and be technology champions. When it comes to scheme criteria or entry criteria, we have tried to keep that as open as and inclusive as possible. So there is no age limit for our graduate scheme. So if you graduated 30 years ago, or you haven't yet graduated but are due to next year, then that's absolutely fine by us. So no expiry on your degree achievement. We also don't ask for you to have studied a specific degree subjects. So we have people that have joined us that have done things from veterinary science to English literature, and people that have done computer science and every other kind of degree in between. What's really interesting to us is recruiting a variety of people with variety of experiences and backgrounds that can come and join us and bring your ideas along with them. So you'll either already have a degree or you'll be on track to achieve your degree in 2022, but there's no specific pass requirement. So we don't ask for a first or a 2-1. As long as you're on track to get a degree, that's all we ask for. Alongside making sure that you do have 5 GCSEs at grades A to C, 2 of which being in maths and English. Not all of our roles are available in all locations. So obviously one of the stipulations is that, you can work from that location and be based out of that office location. So we do a minimum of sort of 3 days a week in the office. Our software development roles do require a level of coding ability, but like I said at the beginning, we're not looking for coding experts. If you've signed up or you've done one of the Code First Girls courses, that is, that would set you in fabulous, fantastic stead to apply for any of our graduate roles. I'm just going to check the chat and see if there's any questions. hopefully that's answered the questions that had on the entry requirements. But just to give you an idea of sort of what you could expect if you were to join us. So there's a starting salary of 28,000, plus we offer a bonus on top of that, yearly bonus. All of our roles are permanent from day one. So unlike a lot of other graduate schemes where they're a role for a certain amount of time, our roles are permanent from day one. And we'll train you up to get professional qualifications alongside your day-to-day learning as well. Annual leave, so 29 days holiday, but yeah, lots of opportunities to get involved with your self-learning. So lots of tools available for you to take up if you are eager and hungry to learn, and we offer flexible working. So our applications are open now. If you are interested to apply, like I said, just absolutely stress, we don't need you to have had a tech background. We've got a number of our new starters this year have been career changers that, tech is relatively new for them. So, please don't let that put you off. But we'll send a link round to our website so that you can have a look at the roles that are available. Application process is fairly straightforward. So online application, submitting your CV and a questionnaire. There's some online testing, so psychometric testing. And then there's a telephone screen with a member of our recruitment team. The very last stage of our assessment process is my favourite. It's our virtual assessment centres. And you come and join us for a day or half a day and do a number of activities throughout the day. So we get to see you in a group interview situation, in an individual interview scenario, as well as some short individual tasks as well. And we do get feedback that people really enjoy the assessment centres. And I know we ran a Code First Girls assessment centre last year, and again they told us that they enjoyed it. So I can see that Bianca's got a question. Are there any positions in London? So yes, our user experience designer position can be based out of London. I think currently that is the only one that is based out of London at the moment. The others are predominantly Bristol, Norwich, Perth and York. Has anybody got any questions on our roles? I know that's a bit of a whistle stop tour, but like I said, we'll send links around to our website so you can check it out. If anybody wants to send me a request on LinkedIn, if you want to have a chat about any of the opportunities, feel free to reach out to me and I'd be more than happy to talk you through.
Amazing, thank you, Claire. Just sort of pushing on from that, we've actually got some nano-degree places that are going to be sponsored by Aviva for the spring. The applications are actually currently open. They close the 10th of December. For people that don't really know what the nano-degree is, it's a 13-week intensive program that focuses on 3 different streams. So I believe that Aviva will be sponsoring places for the software development stream and the DevOps stream as well. So it's a 13-week course where you do 6 weeks where all 3 streams will share, and then you'll have 6 weeks for specialization. And then towards the end of it, Aviva will have jobs for those who have fully completed the nano degree. So it's a really great opportunity. I'll add the link to that in the chat as well. Applications are open, so feel free to quickly get onto that as well. This is for the spring. We will have sort of other positions opening up at different times of the year as well. So if this one doesn't really work out for you, feel free to check the other ones out as well. So I'll quickly bring everyone else onto the stream as well, and then we can answer some questions. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Amazing. That was such a great session. So we've got a couple of questions about just Aviva in general, and then just a couple of sort of coding questions as well in terms of how you can actually get get into the sort of roles that you've mentioned. So one of the questions that we've had in the chat is, obviously you mentioned that the entry requirements, so you don't necessarily need a computer science degree. Are there specific skills that you're looking for when people apply for these positions?
Definitely curiosity, and I know it sounds a bit like a cliche, but just people that are really passionate about technology. Like I said before, we don't need people to be technology experts. That's what we will train you to do. But for people to be passionate about how technology can change and have a really positive impact, particularly on the lives of our customers and our colleagues, and that connectivity that technology can bring. So we the way that we recruit Krupa is strengths-based recruitment. So for anybody that hasn't heard about strengths-based recruitment, you might have heard about its more traditional predecessor, which is competency-based recruitment. So competency-based recruitment is where employers look for you to demonstrate all of the things that you have done in the past, whereas we actually look to identify potential. So we do something called strengths-based recruitment, which looks to find out what you enjoy doing and match you to a role that we think you're going to enjoy doing. So, if you join us as a business analyst, we don't need you to have been a business analyst previously, but what we do need you to know is, or to be passionate about, is solving problems, interacting with colleagues, probably being really confident in a group situation, being able to bring people together, those kind of qualities. So it's more about strengths and qualities than it is about skills and experience for us at Aviva.
Yeah, because what I would just add to that, I think sometimes you actually use those kind of softer skills more, depending on kind of how your day is looking. But I think what's important is the fact you are kind of working collaboratively as a team. You gain a lot of skills out of that, and I think it's about being confident and showing that kind of ambition, because all of the, like Claire said, all of the technical skills that surround it, that you'll get training for that. It's about those softer skills, which if you can demonstrate well, it'll put you ahead, and it will actually give you that kind of opportunity to do well.
Krupa, I need to leave now for a personal appointment, but I'm going to leave you in the very safe hands of David and Neil.
Brilliant. That sounds good. I think her internet cut off. We've actually got another question specifically for you, David. So can I join the apprenticeship even though I completed an undergraduate degree? And what are the sort of requirements to be a successful candidate?
So I'm not really sure on the specifics of that one.
So I could take the first bit, yeah. so it really depends what you've done your degree in. So with apprenticeships, you can do, say, an apprenticeship in software engineering, as long as your degree is not in a higher level of education in that subject. So if you've done a degree in computer science, you cannot then do a level 4 or 6 apprenticeship, but you could do a level 7 software engineering apprenticeship, which is a master's. So so we have got people on our apprenticeship scheme doing software engineering at level 6. They've got master's degrees in history, got them in actuarial science. So as long as the subject is in something completely different and not related, so you're not kind of like doing the same learning and modules, then it's okay. Yes.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and
sorry. The only thing I would add is, for an apprenticeship, as crazy as it is, even if you've got a degree, to do an apprenticeship, even at a level 4, which is the equivalent to a foundation degree, you do need to have maths and English. Grades 4 to 9 to be able to complete an apprenticeship. As crazy as it sounds, but that is part of the conditions of an apprenticeship.
Yeah, and I would just kind of just the second part of that question. So I think kind of what makes a successful candidate, I think it's about kind of showing your skill set, being able to come across in a confident and ambitious manner, because that's what the assessment centres are centred around. Is a lot of those kind of like meta skills. But what I would add is like, so previously before I joined Aviva, I done like a lower level apprenticeship, and then I kind of took the step. It's different because the framework's slightly different in Scotland. But essentially it is that kind of lower level, and then I went to like a degree level apprenticeship. So I think what I would say is, the experience I gained through that, and even if you have like experience within employment, you'll actually be surprised, but a lot of the skills are very, very applicable, because we're building products for our customers, and it's about kind of being a change agent, so welcoming change, being open-minded, and actually open-minded to learn more things, because when you join a company like Aviva, you don't just come in and learn one thing. You're learning various, like I mentioned in the kind of opening remarks, like you learn so many different tech stacks. It's about kind of that openness to learn, and yeah, that's what I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah, and they're the things that we look for in the selection process as well. So it's not those with the loudest voice. We're looking for the people, the ones that can listen, the ones that then can contribute, the ones that can pull other people into conversations. And we look for people that want to always improve themselves and learn as well.
Yeah, and also like I think as well, when you're coming into like an organization that's pretty big, there's so many opportunities to actually, if you have an interest in, if say you're kind of down the line, and like I am a little bit, like I've been a software engineer for nearly coming up to 4 years in September next year, but actually there's so many different roles within IT. So if you were doing a software developer role for a period of time, and you actually were interested in our role, it's the good thing is you can actually do that. Not to say that you're going to come in and do that straight away, because I wouldn't recommend that as such. But what I'm trying to say is, long term, if you have an interest in an audit role in IT, there's always scope to get that experience.
That's really great that you touched upon that, both of you. We've got a lot of interest in the roles at Aviva. So my next question is, what's it like working for such a large company? What's the sort of culture like at Aviva?
It's interesting, actually. Well, I think you've got complete opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of career. So I'm an older gentleman. So I've been at Aviva for 34 years. So in terms of what David has just said, so when I joined the company, I worked in administration, so administering pension schemes, keying them into computer systems. But over a period of time, I had a great interest in technology. And, throughout my career, I've spent 25 years of it now in IT. But in that time, I've been a business analyst, I've been a project manager, I've been a program manager. I've worked in marketing, business development. I've never worked in finance. But now I run a graduate and apprenticeship program for IT in Aviva. I've never done that before. I was asked to do it, jumped at the chance. So, although I've been here such a long time, it feels like I've done 15, 16, still different as well. They're kind of like micro cultures within our organisation. So working in the life part of our business. It's been different to working in the general insurance side, to working in what used to be the digital business, to our commercial business. But again, the thing that, you know, probably why I've been at Aviva such a long time is I love the people. The people are fantastic. You know, I've got so many friends that I've made over the years, and it's, yeah, I love it. If not, I would have left. But then you've got David. So David, you know, a lot earlier in his career. So yeah, you know, in terms of, I don't know what you think, David. You might completely contradict me.
No,
but,
I would.
That's my view.
Yeah, obviously, like I've been here for a lot shorter. Like over 3 years, I've worked for Aviva. But can you hear?
Are you there, David?
Can you hear me? Okay.
I always lost his headset.
I can hear you, David.
Okay. I suppose
I can hear you. I can hear you. Yeah. I was just going to add. Yeah. So in the
downside, I would say, in a big organisation is it's complex. You get politics in all companies, but Aviva is big.
Yeah, I was just going to add, like, in the 3 years I've worked for Aviva, I think it's what I love about it is the opportunity, and it is that opportunity to try different experiences, and it doesn't actually necessarily have to be everything you do in your day job. It's the kind of, I think it's that kind of talent
Keep talking,
pipeline. Can you not hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, it must be Neil's end. Yeah, I was just saying I think if you're shown that talent, they'll definitely give you that opportunity. So I think my long-term ambitions within the company is to go into more like senior leadership. But actually, what I like about Aviva is the fact that I'm able to get involved in so many different things, from Aviva Pride right to kind of advocating for apprenticeships and graduates, and why we should be kind of recruiting a whole kind of diversity of thought, essentially giving us a better culture and organization. So I think, yeah, Neil was just touching on, sometimes with a larger organization, it is that kind of complexity that comes with it. So it's trying to actually learn it can be a bit harder, because you're trying to understand both. One, you're trying to understand the the programming language, but then additionally you've got all the complexities that it comes with insurance. But again, it goes back to the point, you don't need to know everything, and that shouldn't be a scary thing, because there's different learning opportunities with that. And I'm still learning about the company. It's that big. I've only seen a small part of it, in my opinion, because we've got the life business, and we've got Aviva Investors, so we're such a large organization in that sense. But that does come with a lot of benefits too, including opportunity, including that chance to do other roles. And Neil's just proved that that's possible, and I've seen that already in the short period of time I've been given opportunities. I've been given good contacts. I've managed to build that network within the industry. So I can only see it as a good thing working for a large company.
That's a great response. I think that's all the time we have for questions today. But thank you both of you for joining the stream and giving us such a good insight into what Aviva does, the culture at Aviva, and the opportunities that we have. Thank you everyone for joining. I've put most of the links in the chat. Feel free to sort of message us if you have any other questions. Claire mentioned that you could sort of add her on LinkedIn. So if you are interested in the opportunities, feel free to sort of go reach out. You should potentially be getting an information pack with the slides that we weren't able to present. So feel free to look at those as well. And I think we've just got one question about the nano degree. And yes, the 10th of December is the deadline for the spring nano degree applications. Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone.